What does a field guide do? I think we are more here for the support of the science over the summer, so both logistic and safety-wise.
So when we're on base, we're fixing kit, servicing equipment, getting it ready to go out into the field for the next project. And then when we're off base in the summer, we'll be helping out the scientists around the field all over the British Antarctic territories.
When we are in the deep field, so further south, we are just helping with all the technical aspects of glacier travel, safety and decision making.
And then in winter, we're off base quite a lot, taking people out on their winter trips.
Winter trips where they get to sort of experience Antarctica and gain more knowledge and skills and see why they are key to the operations that happen out here. Where we go can be anything from on the peninsula to all the way to the South Pole, or it just depends where the science needs to happen. So we've got operations obviously over at McMurdo, as well as at Halley and at Sky Blue. So it might either be a field project where we're a mobile unit, or it could be a big camp. It just depends on what the science and objectives are for that year.
So in winter, in general, we wouldn't leave Adelaide Island.
So on Adelaide Island, which is our playground, we could probably go about 70 or 80k, but a lot of it boils down to the weather and movement. So we are trying to operate in good conditions, or at least favourable conditions.
And then in summer, pretty much the whole of Antarctica could be fair game. Obviously it depends what science projects are on, what instruments need service, whether the BAS planes are maybe supporting another nation for some collaborative work. But in general, in the British Antarctic territory, you get down to somewhere between maybe 80 and 85 degrees south is the furthest south that people would go on a sort of year-to-year basis. But obviously there's exceptions to that.
We are talking about thousands of kilometers, and I quite liked thinking about, for example, last summer, if I had take off at London and went for the job I went to, it would have been something like Greece or, Turkey. So it's like crossing the whole Europe to do a job. And obviously we are crossing a continent where no one lives, so it's really remote.
A lot of the people we take out aren't that experienced, maybe not all that fit, might not have been to a polar environment before or even any big mountains before. So we can have all the kit and we have all the training in place as well. So we can get people issued with everything they need to go through the training. That takes several days. And then we just take it steady when we first go out.
So, this is our egg. Dave, watch yourself around here. What's going to happen is we're going to have to take turns at a time, but one of us will walk over the edge, build an anchor, we'll abseil towards the edge, check the person's okay, which they will be, because we don't need to do out of them up, because it's a bit of a pain in the slope. We'll set up our holding system, and we'll then hold them up. And they'll assist a bit with walking up. Does that make sense? Well, I'll get close to the ground. First thing I'm going to do, kick my feet in hard as fuck. Okay? Leaning in on my hands, nice and strong. Okay? A snow stakes. See, one end's got a little widening, the other end's a bit chamfered. Placing them like the letter T towards the person, about 20 degrees. So, see what I mean? Okay. Push it as far as you can by hand, using a hammer. So I put the lid down, so if you just move a little bit that way, so I can push that, I would quietly slack now, but when I step up carefully, until I'm open, and now that's open the system. That's it, really kicking those feet!
So yeah, there's no sort of prerequisites for the people we're taking out as such. We can kind of take them from nothing to a reasonable level over the space of a few weeks.
Which could be quite interesting. Last season was quite a small season, so we were basically working with people who know the environment through and through. And hopefully this season we'll have scientists and maybe new scientists who are new to Antarctica. And at the end of the day, it kind of boils down to the person and how they take to the experience.
So we did a whole host of rope work training, crevasse rescue stuff on the ship, which was a little bit strange because we were crossing the equator at the time. It was really warm and we're doing crevasse rescue. But then when you get to base, we're a bit more set up for that sort of stuff. So there's a whole host of field modules that we take you through, from basic mountaineering, rope work, crevasse rescue, abseiling, climbing a rope. And then a big one that no one's done before is the link skidoo travel. That's something that's obviously quite unique to Antarctica. Pretty much all the terrain that we cover down here is glaciated and therefore potentially crevassed. So just like you would rope up as a pair of your mountaineering in crevasse terrain, and it's exactly the same concept with the skidoos. You rope two of them together with a 30-metre link line and then connect the driver to the skidoo with an absorbica. And that way, if one of the skidoos was unlucky enough to go through a slot, the second skidoo can hopefully hold it, and hopefully no harm would come to the person. So if you're two people heading out to camp, you're obviously going to have a skidoo each. You only ever have one person on a skidoo when out in the field. And you're each going to tow a wooden Nansen sledge. One of those sledges will be set up as what we call a full unit. So with all the kit that we're going to use to camp for the planned duration that we're out. And then the other sledge will be set up as a half unit, which is a little bit smaller and essentially just a set of emergency kit. Should you do a day trip from camp, you would take that with you. Or if for some reason you lost anything off the full unit sledge, then you have redundancy with that backup.
So setting up a camp like here, so how it works is we got obviously our living space, the pyramid tent that we're staying in now.
The first priority is getting the tent up, because the tent is our only really genuine form of shelter. So the tents we've got here are particularly brilliant. They withstand all kinds of weather and horrific conditions. So getting that set up straight away is the priority, because we don't want the wind to pick up to a point where that's not going to be possible.
We're using pyramid tents primarily down here, so they're really cool. Inside a two-man pyramid, you'll have someone sleeping on either side, and then down the middle you'll have a line of 3 wooden boxes, and in the middle of them is the Primus stove, and then hanging from the point, the top of the tent, you'll have the tilly lamp, and that's kind of the basic setup. It's kind of quite standardised.
And then we have set up with that is our radio, so that's our main communication back to Rothera. And then staggered away from that is our sledges, and then staggered away from that again is our skidoos tarped up for the night as well in case a storm comes in.
First thing you want to look at is the prevailing wind direction, and hopefully that's the same as the wind direction you're currently experiencing. So then it's quite an easy decision that you want to set camp up across the wind. So for example, if you have a prevailing northerly, you want camp to kind of run east and west, with maybe 10 metres or so between each item, like the tent, the toilet tent, the skidoos and the sledges. I mean, that way it just stops things drifting in, so nothing gets too buried. So ideally, if you sort of manage to get it right, you've got a really nice straight line. Obviously in practice it's not always perfect, but yeah, we try our best to get things in a straight line, sort of perpendicular to that prevailing wind.
How dangerous is Antarctica? It's a really good question, because here at base everything feels really safe. We are in an environment where we're not taking that much risk. But as soon as you step outside of this area and you start to wander, everything can go wrong pretty fast. And I think the hard thing for people here to understand is this switch, this really fast switch of, it's all comfy and safe, to it can turn to something pretty dangerous really fast.
Yeah, I would say it's all pretty user-friendly, unless someone does something stupid, and then it could get very, very unuser-friendly. So when it comes to the actual environment, we're quite blessed this far north to have not frequent extreme cold. Like, we get cold spells now and again, but I would say it could be quite easy to forget where you are and just how remote you are. So depending on the weather and the conditions, so if it's a really nice sunny windless day, you can be evacuated pretty quickly. But if the wind picks up and you do something stupid, then you could be there for a very long time. So yeah, when you consider like distance to real hospital medical care, it's quite considerable. And when you think about the environment and how if you don't get your tent set up quickly enough, or you do wander off to the toilet without a GPS, then it could go wrong pretty quick.
Yeah, for me, Antarctica is something you always have to question, and you always have to be wary of what could go wrong, even if you're enjoying a nice day, because you don't have any margin of mistakes.
Doesn't always go to plan. You can have a whole host of issues, from lashings with the sledge, things falling off when you're hitting big sastrugi, right the way down to sort of really low temperatures, which we experienced last week. We reckon it was well below -35, and we woke up in the morning, lovely sunny day, no wind, really keen to go out. Untarped the skidoos, did the usual pre-start checks, and found that the antifreeze had frozen solid, and also the engine oil was almost solid as well. So that was us kind of stuffed for the day. We had to get the little generators out. Obviously they wouldn't start, so we took them in the tent to warm them up, got the generators going, at which point we could then plug the block heaters on the skidoos into the generators to try warm the engines. That took a good few hours though. But eventually we did manage to get the skidoos going, but we pretty much lost the day at that point. So yeah, the problems just keep coming when it's that cold.
So the terrain is probably the trickiest part, or the most dangerous part here, because the scale is huge compared to any other massif or mountain where we travel on glacier. And it's kind of hard to understand how the crevasses form and where they are compared to, let's say, in Europe. It's pretty straightforward. They always form at the same place pretty much, and if you can read the mountain, you know where to go safely. In Antarctica, you can't always see mountains, you don't really know exactly where you are, you don't have a proper understanding of what's below the ice. So crevasses can randomly appear in different directions at different places. So yeah, crevasse fall is probably the main concern when you're traveling through Antarctica. After that, of course, the weather is the main issue. The strong winds, in which you can just get lost pretty easily because of the drifting snow. And the cold, obviously. We've got really good gear, but once again, you don't have any margin of mistakes. When we travel on an unknown area, we can use a GPR machine, ground penetrating radar. So the ground penetrating radar just allows us to have an imagery of what's happening underneath the skidoo, for example, because we use it when we are traveling on skidoos, not on foot. And just by reflecting the wave, just reflects what's happening under the ice, so we can basically see if there is a wall, and if there is a wall, that means there is a crevasse. We don't find our way like that. We've got a pretty good idea of where we are going, but it's more like last minute validation if it's safe or not.
So when we're out and about, most annoying?
I guess it depends who you're with, really. It all boils down to the team at the end of the day. So yeah, the weather is bad, then you're spending day in, day out with someone in a 2x2 meter space. So yeah, there's nowhere to go. So you either need a very good book or a good sense of humour if it gets too much.
I think it's probably needing to go for a pee when I'm in the tent. Yeah, if the weather's really bad, you need to go to the toilet, you've obviously got to put all your clothes on, shoes on, boots, and then head on out, and yeah, can be a bit of a faff.
So the toilet facilities, so there is either a pee flag, quite self-explanatory, that's where you go for a pee, Then there is a toilet tent, and in the toilet tent we have a waste bin. You then got a lovely toilet board on with a nice bit of foam that keeps your bottom nice and warm, and you can go for your number 2, or as you said, your shit in that tent.
The bad thing about being in the deep field, well, is being in the deep field, I guess you just have to love it. So I just love being in this environment where actually we are not supposed to be. So I really enjoy that. But sometimes this environment reminds you shouldn't be here. So when it's really windy, stormy, cold, and you've got to deal with all that, shovel a lot of snow, and I don't know, I kind of enjoy it. It's kind of a love-hate relationship with Antarctica.
Actually, so one of the coolest things so far has been landing in the middle of the Ronnie ice shelf at a place called TRD, so the 3 Ronnie depot, and then the plane took off, and then realizing that the nearest people would be about 500k away, and we were on the middle of an ice shelf, and it was just me and the other field guide Sarah in a tent. So it was just like, great, if the equipment doesn't work or something went wrong, it would be us have to solve the problem. So it's just like, this is actually quite cool, just being out there and being left responsible to look after ourselves in quite a, I guess, hostile environment, but it also, it's like, yeah, really cool in that way. And then that same job, we had a day where we were moving the depot from where we were across a crack to the safer side, because the ice shelf was starting to crack up a little bit, so they're worried about the depot basically being lost out to sea. So we moved it from there to MRD, so the Mid-Ronnie depot, and that was amazing because it was 2 planes getting loading up and running shuttle flights to move this depot. And it was just amazing to see like the teamwork of the pilots and the co-pilots and us, like filling the planes, loading the planes, and just getting the job done. And there wasn't really spoken like of logistics and plan. It just like autonomously happened between the team. And it was just really cool, like those days where you know everybody loves the job and loves getting involved, and you don't need to lay out the picture of what happens because they're skilled and knowledgeable people, so they can just do it. And it's just like, this is why the people that Bass employ are like some of the best that they do in their job. Yeah, so... Sorry, excuse me one sec. Yes, JB?
What was the wind direction for tomorrow?
It was the same again as today, and it's meant to be dropping through the day.
Yeah, so we may as well get focal here.
Yeah, so it could be fuck all here, and looks like down south it was like blowing a houlier.
Yeah, we'll give it a go.
Yeah, I don't see why not. There's those cliffs on the other side of the Shellman that looked like there'd be people climbing on. I think there's some routes on it, eh?
Yeah, I'll check that.
I'm sure you'll be fine. Welcome to Fuchs. This is Fuchs House, named after Vivian Fuchs, one of the first directors of Bass. He was quite renowned for pushing Antarctic exploring, and this was one of the first buildings erected for storing all the field equipment and gear that's needed for that as well. So I'll just give you a quick tour around then. So we'll start off here. This is where we test and service all the stoves. So we have all the spare parts that we need for all these old stoves. So these look very similar to what Scott would have used back in the day, and the same with the old Tilly lights as well. The reason we use these is because they work in really cold temperatures and they're pretty bomb-proof. You can like service them all the way down to all the individual parts. Because Fuchs has been around quite a long time, the building itself, some of the diagrams we have are pretty old school, but they do a great job of explaining actually what things are. So this is a diagram of a Tilly taken apart, and this is obviously the more modern illustrated version that we've got from the company, but these are the great hand illustrations as well. This main area here we've got is the sledge store, which is big because in the winter one of our jobs is to carry out the winter services, And the sledges are about 12 foot long, so we obviously need a lot of space for that as well. All the stuff we use for servicing the sleds we keep over here. So we got twine, old screws and nails, and it's all imperial is the measurement. So it's actually, the equipment we use again is like what Amerston and Nansen and people like that used to use, so hence why it's still imperial and it's a bit confusing as well. The next two sort of important places we've got the gentleman outfitters, which is where we keep all of our clothing equipment. So when you get sent south, you'll be issued with a load of clothes to keep you warm. Obviously, sometimes it might wear out, or you might need some additional stuff, or mountaineering boots and other specific things as well. So we have loads of mountaineering boots rated for 8,000 meters, so for keep your feet nice and warm. If you haven't got warm feet, you're not really going to be doing much in Antarctica. We then also have our cold weather clothing stuff as well. So we've got some of these old skidoo suits. So if you're doing long distances, you might put on a skidoo suit. Or we've also got these super warm down jackets from Rab. We've got like things for camping as well. So we've got booties to keep your feet warm in the tent, lightweight down jackets. And then before we had wonderful heated hand grips, we had these great gloves here. So these are called old bear paws. So they're big warm mitts that you can get loads of layers under, and to keep your hands great and warm. Other thing as well we might need in the field is for your rucksack to carry all our clothing and food and drinking as well. And then again, we've got more clothing here as well. So our salopettes, so we use Paramo, which isn't like Gore-Tex. It's a lot more breathable. So it deals with the sweat that you might have from being in Antarctica. And as it's usually not wet here, it's much nicer to have a breathable fabric than a fully waterproof like a Gore-Tex. These boots are some of the most important things you can have. These are nice warm baffins. So they're rated down to like -30. So they keep your feet nice and warm. So when you're out in the field at places like Sky Blue and Fossil Bluff, where you don't necessarily need mountaineering boots because you're not going to be wearing crampons, you get to wear these sort of boots, and a lot more comfortable to wear than the mountaineering boots for long days, and they're easy to get on and off as well. So the other store we have is the travel store. So this is where more of our technical equipment's kept, and for also where we keep our stoves and other things like that. So in here we have everything you're going to need for camping in Antarctica. So how it works for us is we have different what we call unit boxes, and they'll have like your stove, your food, your tent living stuff as well. And they're all made up of everything that's on here. And obviously it's all in individual parts. We have like pots and pans, cups, bowls, cutlery, water bottles, toilet roll and toiletries essentials. The most important thing when the weather's really bad is to make sure you got a pee bottle as well. And then other sort of random things that don't seem necessarily important, but are key if something goes wrong when you're in a real deep field location. So if you're down towards Thwaites or out in the Ronnie, where if something with your tent breaks, you're going to need spare guidelines, maybe some fabric to patch the tent as well. So you get all this sort of stuff packed in your spares box as well. Down this side, we've got some of our technical equipment. So obviously climbing helmets for when we're out in the glacier, or if we're doing any mountaineering, you need them on. Snow stakes for if you did have to perform any crevasse rescue, then you use the snow stakes to build anchors with in the snow as well. When you're out on the glacier, obviously you're going to need crampons. So we've got various different styles and different lengths, so they should fit most people boot size, unless you've got unusually large feet. One of the key things that we have is CO monitors. So when you're in the tent, obviously the stoves we have, or any stoves we have, produces CO, and just want to make sure that we're not exposing ourselves to high levels of that over a long period of time, especially if you've got long periods of layup. So we have loads of monitors, and they get tested every 6 months. Cool. So keeping on with the technical equipment then, so we've got loads of stuff that we use for our racks and stuff. So we have Jumars, which are for aiding climbing up the rope out of a crevasse. We've got belay devices for abseiling, pulleys, carabiners, etc. Some of it's got specific uses. So we've got ice screws that are obviously used for the sea ice because they've been exposed to salt water, so they're not safe for using for people. And then we've obviously got ice screws that are for using for ice specifically. Obviously we don't have the luxury of being able to knit to the shop for like a bit of cord or a bit of tape. So we have lots of stocks of tape, cord, anything you possibly think that we might need. And we got to keep more than you think, because obviously you might use a load in the year and you'd be like, oh, I really need some more of that. So the next bit we're in here, this is all the food that we take into the field. So the food comes in two ways. You either get a 10-day 2-person man food box, which is just one big box that fits into a crate similar to this. And in that you'll get a breakfast, a lunch of some snacks and cereal bars and some chocolate, and then you'll get a dinner as well. On top of that is tea, coffees, and milk and sugar as well in that box. For smaller trips, we might just make up our own sort of boxes as such. So this is where we come to do that as well. So you've got everything from instant coffee to tins of tuna to, what is the most bizarre thing that you can get is, that's right, tinned cheese. Yummy. So there's everything here that you could possibly want, and it's always worth having that little bit of luxury. So when I've been out in the field, I've taken flour and some powdered eggs and made pancakes in the morning when we've had some lie-up. So something just a bit more enjoyable than just the usual cereal. It makes the lie-up day seem a lot easier and a lot more enjoyable. Cool, so we've got a bit more of the technical stuff here again. So obviously we've got the crampons around the other side, but there's no point in having the crampons on if you haven't got an ice axe. So we've got walking ice axes with adze, as well as we've got ice axes with hammers. So we've got both sorts, so depending on what sort of snow anchor that you're building. Loads of harnesses. Here we've got some of our racks made up of the various equipment, ice screws, jumars and slings and other things. Got loads of ropes as well, so they're key part of crevasse travel. If you're not roped up, then you can't get pulled out of the hole. When we're driving the skidoos, we use these skidoo helmets, just in case you did have a tumble or you did come off the skidoo, your head's protected. What also you need as well is going to be some stuff upstairs. So up here is our pee bag storage and our link line. So when we're traveling in the crevasse, traveling out in the field, we use these ropes to connect all of the sledges and the skidoos together. Here we've got these big bags. These are what we call our pee bags, or our personal bags. And inside them, you can see some of drying from recent trips. You get a sleeping bag, you get a roll mat, you get a carry mat. You also get this lovely sheepskin, and that's what you sleep with in the field as well. And these bags are amazing. They're rated down to like -30 plus, and they keep you nice and warm even on the coldest nights in Antarctica. Another, like I said before, there's no shops we can nip to buy an extra thing or replace something. So we have these industrial sewing machines that we use lots of to fix jackets, bags, anything at all. When we're teaching people to go out into the field, we teach them how to ascend, climb out of the crevasse up ropes, and also how to build anchors. And we've got loads of bits like that around hidden away here. So we've got a rope that we can abseil on and climb up. There's also an anchor tucked away at the back there that we can use to practice using holding systems as well. So yeah, it's a bit of a diverse, tucked away, hidden things in there. So when we're out, a great part of being at Rothera compared to some of the other stations is the recreational options that we have here as well. So there's a local travel area where we've got a place called Valves, and we've also got the ramp where we can use these mountain skis to either go for skinning up or for skidoo uplift up. We've also got loads of Nordic skis, so people can go Nordicing around the flag line, our safe travel area as well. Other things we've got down here as well are we got skis that we use in the field. So we've got these field skis that will take out to certain locations. If you know it's going to be quite snowy travel, then we'll use these skis, because obviously it's easier to travel on skis than it is on foot in the snowy areas. So here we've got our tent store as well as climbing wall. So this is for anybody in station to come and use. So we've got crash mats in case someone falls off. There's also like pull-up facilities, climbing wall training as well. And it's great, like people that never climbed before get into it, and it's just a great fun thing to do in the evening. As well as that, we've got our tents. So we've got these old pyramid tents, again, very similar to what Scott used, and they're super strong, so they can stand winds of like 50 to 70 knots and not really get affected by them. So this room is our ski store. This is where we keep all our sort of recreation equipment in here. We've got snowboards and split boards for the people that are into the snowboarding. I don't really get it, but each of their own. We've also got loads of helmets to wear, so people need to wear a ski helmet in case they do take a tumble, they're not going to hurt their heads. And then we've got loads of different sizes of boots to accommodate everybody's sizes of feet. So in these rooms, we've got 2 workspaces for us field guides. So at the moment it's pretty empty. So this is where Andy and myself are based, and this is where we've got our own personal storage space for our own kit, as well as sort of setting up projects for this coming summer here as well. So you can see we've got Andy's off to Halley, so he's got some of his Halley kit that he's got to take across there. This is King George Sound or Fossil Bluffs open up equipment that's getting put into this unit space as well. This is going to be SB9, and eventually in a week's time all these unit spaces will be filled up with various projects and equipment that's needed for them as well. And this is, I guess, our office. Probably the place we spend the least amount of time in, really. Most of our time is spent servicing the equipment down the sledge store or going out to the flag line and checking bits of equipment and stuff like that. But in here, we do have to answer some emails and stuff from people in Cambridge and line managers and stuff. There's also bits of history. So we've got our little bit of history of museum here as well. So we got tinned butter from, I don't even know how old this is. This is probably like 80s or something. God. So old, it hasn't even got a date on it. But it does feel very hard. Not very good. Yeah, so we've got a little museum. I got tinned bacon. Sounds a bit minging, to be fair. So, old school food and stuff. And then, back when you first worked for Fuchs in the 70s, 80s, you used to get issued with a lot more clothes. Like, even down to your boxer shorts. We've also got some old crampons that you used to use down here back in the day, as well as an old thermos as well. It's just a bit of interest as well. One of the important things we have lots of is flags. We use them for marking hazards, marking depots, marking, you think of it, we'll probably use a flag to mark it. Yeah, so I was saying about how the BAS system works when we use different unit boxes. These are the unit boxes we use. So I can tell you that this blue box is going to be a pot box. So in here I'll find pots and pans and my stove. And then in this yellow box is a tent box. So in there I'll find my plates, knives and forks, and cutlery and other bits for inside the tent as well. And then this green box is going to be an emergency food box. So there's 21 days of food there for 2 people. If something happens awry. You got your spares box as well. So that's going to have spare parts for the second tilly, other bits and bobs as well. If you do happen to head to Halley, so if you're heading on a Halley transfer, you'll get one of these sleeping bags which have a minus 40 degrees sleeping bag in it, a big warm jacket, and other bits that you need to head to Halley as well. Yeah, if something goes wrong in the field, we're responsible for acting like the search and rescue team that you might call in the UK. And this is all the equipment that we have for that as well. So we've got things like vacuum bags to keep casualties warm. We've got first aid kits that are grab bags to open up and have all the stuff the doctor will need. Communication, transceivers, shovels and probes. Basically everything you need as well. So with this and then also some other equipment that we've got stored elsewhere, we can then quickly get to a casualty, stabilize them, and then following on from medical advice, work out what we need to do, if we need to give them any more additional medicine, or if the doctor says it's okay for them to get evacuated or deploy more people, depending on what the situation is as well. We've got stretchers to help us with that as well. So we've got various different sizes of stretchers. We've got old McInnes stretchers, one of the best stretchers in the world ever designed. And we've got these full body stretchers as well that are great. They've got skis on as well that make it really easy to drag them around. And then finally, we've got a bit of a secret storage room up here. So up here is where we keep our big weather havens, as well as some other equipment as well. So at big field camps where they're doing drilling for a couple of days, they're going to set up a weather haven around the drilling rig and then be able to use that as the base for the drilling rig, or if they're a big project, you might use that as a living place as well as a additional camp as well. Loads of water butts, so people are heading to the Northern Peninsula or to an island where the water, you can't melt snow because there's animals and stuff. You might take water with you as well. This is also where we keep overflow of other equipment that we might need more of. So we've got all our boots, bags, frame bags, sheep skins as well. We keep extra ones of them up here. And we also got our overflow of skis and Nordic skis as well. Yeah. So that's Fuchs.
So the BASIS has a fleet of 2 different types of aircraft. We have 4 de Havilland DHC-6 Twin Otters, which is the workhorse of the Canadian North. BAS have been operating for 51 years in the role various different types. The 300s that we have now, we've been operating for over 45 years. That's the mainstay of our fleet, and they're the aircraft that are ski equipped, and they support science in the field and support science beyond Rothera.
Well, I might be a bit biased, but I think they're incredibly reliable. You can modify them to fly basically anywhere in the world. So whether it be here on skis or back home on wheels or on floats, they're pretty reliable, they're pretty robust.
As well as that, we have our intercontinental aircraft is a de Havilland DHC-7-7. That delivers cargo from Punta Arenas and also Mount Pleasant in the Falkland Islands, and that delivers people mostly, but also cargo, and also in a secondary role it delivers fuel directly to Sky Blue. It's always a toss-up between fuel and cargo, so you can go further but you can take less. So generally speaking, we go on an hour and 40 missions. We do everything an hour and 40 minutes legs, which usually means our pilots have a bladder of an hour and 40 minutes, but that means you burn 1,000 pounds of fuel, which is perfect because the takeoff weight of a Twin Otter and the maximum landing weight of a Twin Otter is 1,000 pounds separate. So with that, we're looking at taking about 2,300 pounds of cargo, which is roughly equivalent, just over 1 metric ton of cargo is what we'll take in the airplane. And we'll do that at 135 nautical miles per hour, and then usually cruising in around 9,000 feet. That will give us an endurance of about 4 hours and 40 minutes and say a range of about 300 nautical miles for an operating range, because we always try to have fuel to return back to the place that we started from. The Dash 7 is looking more like a 12 to 1,500 nautical miles range, 6-7 hour flights, and it's cruising more like 210 nautical miles per hour. The majority of our flying will be cargo. We move a lot of cargo, we move a lot of people, and we do probably 5 to 10% of our flying is done in science survey, like the aircraft behind us, where we will strap instruments to the aircraft and we'll directly be involved in science via radar and LiDAR, and also atmospherics, where we'll collect gases and measure gases as we go through certain phases. But 90% of our role will be in the logistics role. Supporting science directly will be moving science equipment, moving logistics, moving a lot of fuel, because science doesn't happen without fuel. And we need to stage fuel for ourselves, for the projects, as well as delivering the instruments and the people who make that science happen.
But we're also a station where all the visiting aircraft that are going to other destinations in Antarctica, they will all come through Rothera on their way south and then back through Rothera on their way north at the end of the season. These visiting aircraft are going to work for other national programs, so they might be going to South Pole, onto McMurdo, to the Australian program, or going over to Neumeier. Some of them are tourist operations like Union Glacier or White Desert. But essentially Rothera is the entry point to Antarctica for these aircraft that mostly are ferried down from Canada, come all the way down North America and South America, and then jump across to Rothera, and that's their first point on the continent. So we're a pretty vital part of the process for all of the other programs. The Rothera runway can get pretty busy at times. Our aircraft will be going in and out all day long during the summer season when the weather's good. The visiting aircraft sort of come en masse, and we usually have sort of between 18 and 20 visiting aircraft coming through. So in periods of bad weather, they can sort of stack up waiting to come south in Punta or stack up here on the apron. So it does get quite busy at times, and then other times the weather's bad, so we might have several days where nothing happens and it's really, really quiet.
The interesting thing about BAT operations is the scope of it. The shortest leg that we do is never really less than an hour, and in a Twin Otter with skis on, you get about 135, 150 miles in that time. And then the furthest place away, we're looking at 1,800 to 2,000 nautical miles. So that's, we're looking at London to North Africa, Middle East level. And in a Twin Otter, that's super unusual. My previous company, we used to do 20-minute legs, 10 minutes sometimes, and that's kind of an average leg for a Twin Otter. Whereas we're kind of pushing them a bit further, and the scope of the logistics is what's so interesting. You get your brief and you see it on a map and you think, oh yeah, I'm just hopping over to this spot. And then when you're sat there 5 hours later and you're still not quite there, it just shows that the Antarctica is a continent and there's a lot of space in between things. When we're training new pilots, that's the thing that we've got to get people's heads into gear with. Everywhere is a potential alternate. In the real world, you've got your destination and then you've got another airfield that you might be able to land at. Whereas in our operation, everywhere that you're flying along, if it's got good contrast, and that means you've got good definition, you can look for the man-made and natural hazards, you can potentially land anywhere. You've got the limitations of that. You've got crevassing, you've got hard surfaces, and rough surfaces, slopes, but generally speaking, you can land wherever you want to land, as long as you can find a safe place to stop.
So every time an aircraft is in the air, we are watching them and we are speaking to them. So we check in with them regularly. We have several different methods as well of keeping an eye on them, using the internet or other things, but our primary method of communication is voice. So we have set waypoints for routes that we use all the time. For other routes, we'll ask them to check in with us every half an hour. And we're always monitoring to make sure that they do call us when they say they're going to call us, and then we're aware if there's any issues.
Victor Papa Foxtrot, Bravo Charlie, Rothera Radio 1181.
Rothera, Victor Bravo Charlie with position Alpha, time 1553, altitude 1,500 feet, and estimating Rothera 1615.
Roger, copy position Alpha at time 1553, altitude 1,500 feet, Rothera at 1615. Thank you very much, Doug. Speak to you shortly.
All correct, Victor Bravo Charlie.
Hanger ops. Bravo Charlie here 10 minutes earlier, quarter past. Victor Bravo Lima, Rothera past position.
Victor Bravo Lima was Echo at 1552, 10 south. Estimating Charlie at 1636, Alpha next. And estimating Rothera at 1735. Victor Bravo Lima.
Victor Bravo Lima, thank you. Position Echo at time 1552, altitude 10,000 feet. Charlie at 1636, Alpha next, Rothera 1735.
All correct. And for the hangar, we have on board 2 empty drums and 1 rubbish bag. Victor Bravo Lima.
Roger, 2 empty drums and 1 rubbish bag. And I have the latest Rothera weather for you when you're ready to copy. Rothera weather at time 1600 Zulu. Wind 010 degrees, 12 knots, gusting 19 knots. Visibility 25 kilometres to the south, 40 kilometres elsewhere. Weather, intermittent light rain. Contrast, poor to moderate. Horizon, moderate. Total cloud, 8 octas, consisting of 3 at 030, 7 at 048, with layers above. Temperature plus 04, dew point plus 01, QNH 985 hectopascals, with comments, visibility reduced by rain to the south. How copy?
985, all copy. Victor Bravo Lima.
Thank you.
When we're planning to fly in the real world, we would we would go off and we'd file a flight plan, we'd go and work out the performance, and we'd check the NOTAMs. And we do a lot of those things still. We obviously still check the performance of the airplane. We do the weight and balance to make sure that we're within the performing and mass and balance envelope of the airplane. But we also plan in different ways where we're very reliant on satellite pictures. Our forecaster is usually covering an area that could be up to 10,000 square nautical miles. So we are much more involved with the forecasts and the checking of the weather, and that's a much bigger planning consideration for us. And we're involved with the field ops manager who gives us whereas if we're working for a normal cargo airline, we get our cargo and that's it. We don't get involved in that. We're actually intimately involved in how much cargo can we take, how many runs do we need to take, where do we need to stage the fuel, is there a better way of doing it, is the weather not good for those areas, so we're going to plan a different way around. Because we have a series of 60 depots in our system, but we could also make our own depot if the weather requires it. So we're less interested in the filing of flight plans and the bureaucracy, and we're more invested in making it work in an efficient and safe way. The biggest risk of flying in Antarctica is all the natural phenomena. So the weather is very challenging because we don't have very high resolution forecasting. So the weather can be always very challenging. And we have other weather effects that are difficult, like contrast is something that most pilots don't concern themselves with. Very high level cloud for us is actually very significant, because the moment you lose the contrast, the technique that every pilot uses to land is when you get down to a very low level, you then flare the aircraft, you then arrest your rate of descent by effectively pulling back on the controls and slowing that rate of descent. But with low contrast, you literally cannot tell how high you are in that last phase, so you can't judge that. And it's actually very dangerous to judge that flare. So that low contrast situation is very challenging and can be very dangerous. So we have a range of techniques to deal with that, which are very unusual and can feel quite alien to new pilots. And as well as that, we have the natural crevassing and sastrugi are quite big factors. Landing in Antarctica is often there will be nobody on the ground, so we have to assess the surface. We have to make sure it was safe for the aircraft to land because of the sastrugi, which is a natural phenomenon in the snow, which is caused by wind, which creates big waves and ripples, which can sometimes be very, very hard and could damage the aircraft. So we need to pick the best line to protect the aircraft. And then we also need to make sure that we land and don't land into crevasses. And the way that we do that is effectively we land with just the main skis, and we keep a lot of flying speed on the aircraft so that we can potentially go around and get airborne again if we open up any crevasses, and then we get airborne again, come back and look over these features that we've made, which we call trails, or this whole process is called trailing skis. We assess looking down through the surface to see if we've broken any snow bridges on crevasses. And if we haven't, then we can come back and land again, and that will be our final landing. If not, we'll have to pick someone else. And we often have a field guide or a mountaineer in the other seat when we're flying, just to help us assess those. So those are probably the biggest risks of flying in Antarctica.
We take care of the twin otters that are down here for the season, so we're just here to do routine maintenance on them, as well as any sort of maintenance that might pop up while they're being flown, anything that might break. We're basically here to do anything that the aircrafts might need in order to continue flying. So there's things we might not particularly want to do down here, but if it needs to be done, it needs to be done. So whatever we can do to keep them serviceable and airworthy, we'll do. Back home, we do heavy maintenance overhaul, so we have an airplane in our hangar for a year at a time where we just tear it apart, put it back together, and it flies away. So it's significantly different from what we do down here, because here they go flying every day and we do the maintenance in between.
So the background of all of our pilots is very different, and we're looking, because we're a small team, we're looking for a set of skills that is complementary. So we don't want everyone to be the same. So like my background is from twin otters, so I've been flying twin otters to short fields in Cornwall in the UK, but other pilots are ex-military. We have test pilots, we have pilots from airlines, we have pilots from very small operators as well, so that everybody brings their own thing to the party. Everyone's got another little skill to add to make us, a more efficient team, more effective team. When you fly, usually fly commercially, a lot of the things are done for you necessarily in terms of the operation. There are a lot more members of staff, so the average pilot wouldn't necessarily be that involved in the generation of your SOPs, the way that you operate, the secondary duties that you have, just the planning side. You're responsible for a lot more of that down here. So you have to be a bit more resilient that way. That's why we have to have people with lots of different skills. So they have a secondary duty. We have people who are involved in mapping and integration with scientists and integration with the flight planning. So that's kind of why we were looking for lots of different skills as well as just the flying skills. When we're recruiting new twin otter pilots, we're looking for people who have flown single pilot, which is quite unusual now in the modern world. A lot of flight decks are two pilots, and there are lots of benefits to that. Within the twin otter fleet, there is quite a lot of advantages to be a single pilot, but it's a different discipline. You have to be a bit more pragmatic about things, and you have to be able to interrogate your own thoughts and be able to make sure that you've not got a check and balance on your ideas. So if you've come up with a plan and you have to maybe wait 5 minutes and think about it again to make sure that it's still a good idea, which in the multi-crew world, you've got another person to bounce ideas off. So we're looking for people with that kind of experience first and foremost. That's the core skill that we're looking for. The other stuff, the ski flying, the mountain flying, it's all stuff that we can teach. So if we've got someone with aptitude and someone who's got experience working on their own as an operator, we can bring them the rest of the way, I think. So the thing about ski landings and teaching people ski landings is that everybody has in their head that they're going to be landing on a gentle, soft pillow of snow, and people forget that actually the surfaces and the snow are usually really rough. So the first landing for people is usually a bit of a shock. They're expecting this beautiful soft touchdown and they get bashed about, their whole aircraft is smashing around. So there's a concept within aviation of STOLs, short takeoff and landing, and the Twin Otter is a STOL aircraft. But it's more of a philosophy. It's not just about taking off and landing the shortest distance. It's about protecting the aircraft and taking off from very challenging short airfields, because they don't make very short tarmac runways. The short runways are usually in pretty bad places, very bad gravel, very bad snow conditions. So you want to look after the aircraft. So generally speaking, when we take off, we're trying to get the aircraft airborne as quick as we can, and get the nose off the ground, which is the weakest point of the aircraft, and then accelerate low to the ground before climbing away. And in landing, we're less concerned about landing in the shortest distance, but more concerned about landing with the smallest ground speed, which means that the energy impacted on skis and therefore the rest of the aircraft is the slowest. So we use a range of techniques to land at the slowest possible speed. That's not always true, because if we're landing between big features, big crevassing in the mountains, we're then using other techniques to land in the shortest distance. So it's using a range of different techniques and picking the most appropriate one on the day, which is the most important thing.
One of the most amazing places is a place called Fossil Bluff, and it just reminds me of being back home, a little Scottish bothy, out on the middle of nowhere, where it's just like, I wrote a poem whilst I was there called Fossil Bluff, and in it I called it the Antarctic Shangri-La. So yeah, it's a pretty special place, and I'm sure quite a few people would probably say that through their time that have been in Antarctica as well.
There we go. How cool is that? So that's what have you looked in the book, The Silent Sound? So this is possibly one of the machines they used to get it up the building and all the supplies up for the winter. So 60 years ago. Yeah. There's an old photos in the hut of having the Alpine 3s in here, and old sleds and stuff as well, which is pretty cool. It's a cool old place. down 10 metres at a site called Fern on the way down to South Doorline. So yeah, really good day. Took us 6 hours, but the first full call we got.
That's awesome news. I think you're probably one of the only teams that got a lot done today. It's been pretty grim everywhere.
I think you find the Bluff guys were off through grafting as well.
Sorry, it's foolish of me to consider you all one party, I know.
We are two entities, like embryos, symbiotic with each other.
Definitely not parasitic.
Some might consider that as an option, but you know, I like to think we are symbiotic. What is it? Is it algae and lichens that have to...
Lovely, I'm sure very helpful to each other. What's on the cards for tomorrow?
Leeching off.
Well, we're going to leech off the bluff a little bit longer and then head up to local AWS and possibly do another core there, is the plan.
Right, I can offer you, would you like a joke of the day or a fact of the day?
Oh. What a joke.
If we take the joke, does that mean you'll give the bluff the fact?
No, I have a vast array of both.
So how is it of the day? You've got many of them. That doesn't make sense.
Of your day, not of my day.
Ah, touche, madam, touche. Very quick. We'll have the joke, though.
I should warn you, they're all really bad.
Trust me, these guys have heard my jokes for the last week. Well, 2 weeks. They're bad. They can't be any worse.
Okay, what did one hat say to the other?
Hats off.
Wool.
We'll take it off.
He said, you stay here, I'll go on ahead.
That's bloody awful.
Dum.
Can we have the fact now?
I did warn you, I haven't got a future in comedy.
Maybe tragedy, but that's totally different. So I've got obviously a broken skidoo and a half unit bits and bobs. So to make my uplift a bit easier, I was going to get Ollie and Al to possibly take some of the half unit clutch back to base tomorrow if they can get in.
Yeah, makes sense.
Rather, Fossilworth.
Hello, Joe.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well, how are you guys?
Oh, exquisite, thank you. What a day.
Yeah, busy day for you. I think you guys are the only one that has seen some aircraft today.
Yeah, there's a lot of eyes on the radio now.
XX.
Oh, who the hell is that?
Yeah. Maybe not say who the hell is XX.
No, that's crazy.
Who is it? XXB? No.
XXB.
Yeah, who are XXB?
Who are who? Say phonetically.
X-ray Bravo.
It's Ken Boric aircraft. They're trying to move some kit from Union Glacier for some private expedition they're supporting, but they keep not going anywhere because of bad weather.
Sounds like a right lot. Yeah, I don't think there's anything else from us.
Right, guys, I'll let you go then. We'll speak to you in the morning for weather ops and hopefully get your planes on the way.
Sounds like a plan. Have an exquisite night.
Bye.
Night.
What does an exquisite night entail?
Wine.